learn more about Ascribe Coder, and also that we will be scheduling more sessions in the coming months. So we will be scheduling webinars throughout March, April, May, and probably even June and July of this year. So again, this is the Ascribe Coder webinar. My name is Laura Rice. I am the Director of Training here at Ascribe. And here we go. And here we go. All right. So I'd like to get started, and I know some of you have seen this PowerPoint before, but I really like everyone to be on the same page when we go through these webinars. So I'd like to get started talking about where we are with Ascribe Coder and what's going on with Ascribe Coder. So Ascribe Coder was released on September 20th of 2013, and it is currently available on the live server. Haven't been getting that question as much lately, but I do occasionally get that question is, hey, how can you give me access to Ascribe Coder? It is there. You can use it today. It is a viable, live, working product. Ascribe Coder was created to merge the functionality of 4 pages. It was created to merge review responses, the single response coder interface, edit the codebook, and codebook editor preview. Codebook editor preview was actually removed from the software on September 20th when we released Ascribe Coder. Okay, so again, Ascribe Coder was created to replace these 4 windows. All right. Ascribe Coder was created with user feedback in mind. The user's wish list that's maintained by our support department was always on hand with the development team, and also the users group gave continual feedback during the development of this product. They participated in looking at the prototype prior to release and testing it in its release when it was a release candidate, and giving their feedback, and they're still actively giving feedback on Ascribe Coder. The users group meets the second Wednesday of every month. If you're interested in that, please shoot an email to myself or Julie or even our support team, and we'll make sure that you get on the users group distribution list. Okay. Also, one of the reasons that we merged the functionality of these 4 pages into one was we had to rewrite them anyway so they could be supported in multiple browsers. Okay, so Ascribe Coder can be accessed through Internet Explorer, usually IE10 and IE11 are best, Chrome, Firefox, or Safari on a Mac. Okay, so Ascribe Coder is multiple browser compatible, and as we move forward with Ascribe, more and more of our tools will be multi-browser compatible. As a matter of fact, today the only ones that aren't multi-browser compatible are Phrase Analyzer and Review Responses, the single response coder interface, and Edit the Codebook. Okay. So my next slide here is a lot of information on this slide. I'm going to kind of skip over the first 2 things here. Just want to let you know that we are constantly updating Ascribe Coder, and again, that's dependent on your feedback. Okay, we did a big patch or a big update or release, version 7.5 on November 29th, where we addressed quite a few suggestions or enhancement requests from our users. And then we've done a couple of patches to that version 7.5 to really get Ascribe Coder working the way that our users would like it to work. So I can actually make this PowerPoint available so that you guys can have it. Probably what I'll do is go ahead and publish it when I publish the videos, so you can read through that piece. What I want to focus on is actually down here. Version 7.6 of Ascribe is scheduled for March of 2014, and I should say it's tentatively scheduled for March of 2014. And that's when we're going to have a spell check available for Ascribe Coder. We should be able to start testing that soon and get it out there for you guys. Then version 8, the most important thing here, is tentatively scheduled for June of 2014. And version 8 will see the removal of review responses, the removal of single response coder interface, and the removal of edit the codebook. All right. So I just want to make it very clear that we're keeping those 3 windows out there now so that you can use Ascribe Coder and give us your feedback and still maintain and give you time to train and get up to speed with Ascribe Coder prior to removing them. So it's very important that you tell us when you absolutely have to use review responses and when you have to use the single response coder interface and when you have to use edit the codebook and why Ascribe Coder isn't doing the job you need it to do. Okay. Then version 8.1 is scheduled for July of 2014, and that's just the release of our Illustrator. And then the next important thing I think for us is version 8.2, scheduled for August of 2014, where we're going to update Phrase Analyzer and move some of the Ascribe desktop functionality into Ascribe Intelligence, like the merge map features from Ascribe Desktop. If you don't know about Ascribe Desktop, that's fine. If you do know about Ascribe Desktop, let us know why you're using it so we can make sure we get all the tools that you need into Ascribe Web. And then finally, version 8.3 is scheduled for October of 2014, where we're supposed to see the removal of desktop and some ACM updates. So I just wanted to share that. I shared this with the users group yesterday, and I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with where we're going with Ascribe Coder and the other tools that we use as coders. So now I'm going to actually go into Ascribe and start the demo. I'm going to navigate over to Supervisor Studies. There we go. Right-click on my study and choose Questions. And I'm going to just be working in my favorite question, the dislikes of my static hair study, and choose Ascribe Coder. All right. So today I'm going to be focused on the response side of the screen, but before I get to that, I will give an overview because, again, I know we have a few people that haven't been in any of these webinars attending today, so just to make sure that we're all on the same page here. So when I navigate into Ascribe Coder, the first thing you might notice is that the codebook is over here on the right side of the screen, which is typical for most of our Ascribe tools. Codebook on the right side of the screen. Nets are bolded. Codes fall below the nets. They're indented, just like we see in review responses today. Above our codebook, we do have our codebook toolbar, and by default, the codebook is locked. And I'll be talking more about this codebook toolbar. I believe it's Monday of next week. We have a webinar on the codebook side of things, and I'll be talking about all of these tools up here. Okay. We do have a resizer bar in the middle of the screen. So if we wanted to change, if we had really long codes and we wanted to see all of our codes, we could pull this over, resize it. If we're editing the codebook, what we might do is actually hit the toggle button here and just open the codebook pane, actually cover up the response pane if we were just working in our codebook for a while. To bring that back, you just hit the toggle button again. At the bottom of the screen, we have our questions. At the bottom of our screen, we have our questions, and to show the question that we're working on, we just hit that little question button. I believe when you first navigate into Ascribe Coder, it looks more like this, and you can bring this up or bring it down depending on how many questions you're showing. If you are showing questions across shared codebooks, it will list all the questions down here. Again, to close that up, you just hit the toggle button, and now it's closed. If I want to bring it back up, I just hit the button again. Okay, so we've got our codebook, we've got our question information, and then we have our response pane. In our response pane, this is where we're going to be returning our responses, and above it we have a toolbar. The first icon in the toolbar is our navigation icon. So in Ascribe Coder, we can't use right-click navigation. Right-clicks result in things that we can do to the thing that we've right-clicked on, or those actions that we can do. But we don't have our navigation menus. To get to our navigation menu, we just click on the navigation icon, and it can be a right-click or a left-click, and you get this. So if you look at this list, you'll see these are places that we can go in Ascribe. Okay, so this is, again, purely for navigational purposes. All right? To the right of the navigation icon, we have our response toolbar, and this is what I'm going to be focusing on today. And then to the right of our response toolbar, we have our tabs to show whether, or to tell whether we're working in the multiple response mode or single response mode. Most of these webinars, I'm working in multiple response mode. I do plan on scheduling the webinar for single response mode probably early March. So just if you're interested in single response mode, be looking for the webinar for that. But today, again, I'm going to stay in multiple response mode. So again, the task at hand is to actually talk about these toolbars, the response pane toolbar. The first tool that we have available is our search tool. And I know if any of you have been using Coder at all, then you should probably be pretty familiar with the search tool by now. The search tool is basically the equivalent of the expression tester in review responses. And what it allows us to do is determine what we want to bring up, which responses we want to bring up. Okay, it allows us to search our responses. Again, by default, there's nothing in the text search field. The show only field is blank, which means it's going to return coded and uncoded responses. And new search is checked. Turn that off for now. And if I hit search, it's going to return again all my coded and uncoded responses. So there we go. Now, a couple things about the search. When we first come into the search, the regular expression box will not be toggled. If you're going to be searching for regular expressions for things like maybe I want to look for, hold on, there we go, dry or frizz, you'd want to make sure you have the regular expression toggled on if you're going to be using symbols like this or symbols like this. Okay, and those of you that have been using Ascribe for a while probably do use searches like this. If you don't know what these symbols are, you might want to attend the regular expressions webinar that we have scheduled. Okay, so again, you'll turn on regular expressions if you're going to be using regular expressions in your search. The second option we have here, the show only, allows us to determine what we want to return. Do we want to return uncoded and coded responses? Do we want it to return just the uncoded responses? So if we return just the uncoded, go ahead and hit go, you'll see that I've got 7 out of 348 responses that meet this expression. Okay. Again, I'm going to be doing a regular expressions webinar later on where I'll talk about the different expressions that we can make to do this. This one is focused more just on the tools that we have available for us. All right. So that returns our uncoded responses. If I want to return those responses with any code applied that meet dry or frizz, now I'm only seeing those responses that have codes applied to them. Okay, so uncoded, any code applied just means coded responses. That's throwing some people through the loop, the wording of this. Responses with any code applied, but really it's just coded responses, right? So then we also have the ability to search. These 3 searches depend on whether we have code selected in our code book. Okay, so let me remove my search expression there, and let me pick a code over here. Let's pick not work quick. When I have not work quick selected, I can say show me all the responses that have not work quick applied. Okay, so now let me put in not work well. Where is not work well? There it is. So now I've got not work well and not work quick selected, and I'm selecting my codes by clicking on the double arrow to the right of the code. I've got both of these codes selected, and since I have any selected codes applied, when I hit go, I'm going to see those responses that have either not work well or not work quick applied. Okay? So, and don't judge me on the coding on this. I've been using this for demonstrations for the last month. So, I know this is coded wrong, but anyway, we've now searched for any of the selected codes applied. If I hit all of the selected codes applied, it's going to only bring up those responses that have both not work well and not work quick. So it's only bringing up 5 responses now. So all brings up 5. Any brings up 6 because there's one response that has not worked well without not work quick. Okay, so that's responses all and responses any. For any of you that are familiar with that and review responses, those are the buttons at the bottom of the screen. We have one other option here, none of the selected codes applied. When I choose return responses with none of the selected codes applied, what I'm going to get are all of my responses, coded or uncoded. So I'll get all my uncoded for sure, and all of my coded responses that do not have not work well and not work quick applied. So I should have 342, and I do. I have 342 responses here. So again, that's just showing those responses that have none of the selected codes applied. That usually works pretty well if you're looking for a certain word or phrase and you want to make sure that that word or phrase was coded with the proper code. So you could kind of go through and say, show me the responses that have this word in it but do not have this code. And that's a pretty valuable tool that we have available to us. Now, just so you know, you can do the search all and search any by right-clicking on the code and hitting search any or search all. This was an addition at the users group requests that we didn't want to always have to go back to the search menu and click any of selected codes or all selected codes. So this and this do the same thing. This one and this one do the same thing. Just to be clear there. All right. A couple of other things that we have. we have the option to search by expression. And let me just look real quick and make sure I've got an expression in here. Yeah. So we can also say, you know, show me all responses matching expressions of the selected codes. And it'll bring up all of the responses that match the expression in price, expensive price. So you see I have an expression built in behind this code to look for the characters price, or P-R-I-C, E-X-P-N-S-I-V, or C-O-S-T. And that's what it did. It just, these options look at the expression of the selected codes. Okay? I can say just show me the uncoded responses that match the expression. So in this case, I'm just seeing the 4 uncoded responses that match my price expression. Or I can say show me the coded responses matching my expression. So now I'm just seeing the coded responses that match the expression. All right, so those are our show-only options, and I know there are quite a few there. Really, the 2 that I believe are used most often are the uncoded, coded, or both coded and uncoded. And as you get into, you know, I believe most of the time if we're trying to return any or all, we're actually right-clicking and doing select all or select any. And then for the expression searches, you know, that's for those that actually do have expressions programmed behind their codes. Okay, so then we have a couple of options here. We've got new search, which is just a brand new search. We've got single respondent, and single respondent isn't going to show well with this particular question. So I'm going to go into a question that makes more sense. I'm going to go into a shared code book question. I'm going to go into Q11 and show you how the single respondent search works. When I do a new search, I just want to make sure I'm bringing up. Take a minute. There's a real quick. Oh, I mustn't have my from shared codebook option turned on. 1 second. So another option that we have here is to bring up responses across shared code books. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and bring up the responses across all these shared code books. And now hit search again and bring them all up, because I want to talk about that respondent. This respondent by respondent is brand new. And the other thing I'm going to do is actually turn on my question ID and my respondent ID. So you guys can see that. And I'll go ahead and turn my respondent ID in red. There we go. Okay, so now I'm showing all my responses from Q11 through Q11 under bar 6. This is an iterated question. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close that up. And if I search by single respondent, what I'm going to do, I'm going to be presented with one respondent at a time across this shared code book. So now I'm presented with respondent 10,342. So I see his answer to Q11 and his answer to Q11 under bar 5. When I hit the search again, what I'm going to see is the next respondent. Okay, so now I'm seeing Q11 under bar 1 and Q11 under bar 2. So if at any time you need to see the shared codebook answers while you're coding, and this usually works for iterated questions, and there's some of these just have the single response. But basically what you're seeing is this respondent answers to all the questions. Okay, so that's the respondent, single respondent search. All right, so now I'm going to pop back over to my exercise 8, and you'll see how I use that navigation icon to do this, right? And go back into Ascribe Coder to talk about my next feature here. And the next feature is search within current result set. So let's say that I want to bring up the people that say winter. And I'm bringing them all up. Oh, there's so many of them. I'm going into Q7 and doing the same thing. And you'll notice that it keeps my search from question to question. So winter is still here in my box. All right, so now I've brought up all my responses that said winter. I've got 23 respondents that said winter. What if I want to show just those responses that said, or I want to select those responses that said winter or static? So I've got the responses up that said winter, not winter or static, winter and static. I want to return those, I want to search these 23 responses for the word static. So basically, I've now selected the responses that said both winter and static. And you can see that there's 18. So I selected 18 responses. Okay, so I've got the option to select in current result set responses or to search. So if I choose search, so when I select, it tells me that I've got 18 out of 23 selected. If I choose search, it's going to just bring up those 18 that had winter now and static. And you can continue to do that. So when you're working with a large response base, you could really get down to, you know, maybe I want to know who said fly. So now I've got the 3 people that said winter, static, and fly. Okay, so the search in and select in, these are both, the search in was there in review responses, but this one is a little more powerful in that we have the search and the select, and our counts are correct at the top of the screen when we use these tools. Okay, one more item here that's available, and that's to include related responses. When you're including the related responses, and I don't know if I have any related on this, I can't remember if we've got related, but when you include related responses, then the related responses will also show. Okay? All right. So that's our
Lauren,
search.
Can you pause 1 second? I'm so sorry. I think if you could go over the last thing you were doing before we related responses, showing them how to go down to the current responses.
Yes, we have 15 minutes left.
Oh, I'm so
No,
sorry.
so that's okay. You know what? Maybe this was just too much to take on in one session. We'll break it down smaller for next time. But cool. Okay, so if I want to search, so my first search here is going to be winter, and I've got a new search, and I hit go. I've got 23 responses that say winter. Okay. 23 responses. Within this set of responses, you search in current responses. These are my current responses, or select in current responses. I've got those two options. So maybe I want to bring up the people that also said static. So now I'm only searching these 23 responses for the word static. When I do that, I'm only going to return those that said winter and static. Okay, so each of these responses will have had the word winter and static in them. If you want to go through, you can kind of see each one has winter and static. Okay, I have regular expressions set up for winter and static. That's why they're underlined rather than in red. Okay, so now let's say I want to go a step further and I need to see those responses that have winter and static and the word fly. So I can type in the word fly. But this time, rather than just returning the responses that have the word fly in it, I want to select them in the current responses. So I hit go, and it selects those 3 responses that have winter, static, and fly. Winter, static, and fly. Winter, static, and fly. So these 3 are selected. So I could code these 3 and then remove them and then maybe search for something else. Okay? So that's how the search in current responses and select in current responses works. Most of the time, I believe we're probably going to be doing a new search, but that's just up to you. Okay? Cool. Okay. There are 2 more tabs on our search responses box. The first one is replace. And I'm not going to go into great detail with the replace, but basically what it allows us to do is find words or character strings and replace them with other character strings just like any other find and replace. But we can do that in our translation field, our transcription field, or our notes field. And we have the option to match case and to match whole word. Okay? Notice that verbatim is grayed out. If you're one of those companies that edits verbatims in Ascribe, you have an account option to turn on editing verbatim in Ascribe Coder. And if you have that account option on, then this lights up, and you can actually toggle on verbatim as well. Okay, so that's how replace works. We also have an inconsistencies search. And this inconsistency search is something that I think probably every coder should run on their data prior to turning it over as a final quality check. What the inconsistency search does is allows us to show, and here I'm going to do inconsistent coding. It says show responses with inconsistent coding, but I'm going to ignore the order. And I'm going to match responses by verbatim. So if I'm coding from the verbatim, and order doesn't matter, these are the 2 options I would want to select. And I can say, just show me the inconsistent coding. And I hit go. And in this case, there's no inconsistent coding. Basically, what that means is it doesn't mean it's all coded correctly. What it means is that I don't have 2 duplicate responses coded differently. Okay? So it means that every time I've got the word nothing, just the word nothing, I've coded it correctly. Okay? There's no responses that are exactly the same that are coded differently. And that's what the inconsistency report does. All right. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead. We might not have a lot of time for question and answer today, but I'm going to go ahead and briefly cover the rest of these tools. I know search is a big one, and I wanted to make sure I got through that. I do want to talk a minute about search again. What search again does is allows us to, so if I'm doing a search for my uncoded responses, I'm bringing up my uncoded responses. There's all my uncoded responses. So now what I can do, I can just code away, and I can code by dragging and dropping, or by selecting multiples and clicking on a code, or by going through and clicking on my regular expression to apply the code, right? And all those guys are completely coded. Let's pretend that all these guys are coded properly. So what I can do, instead of bringing that up and saying just return my uncoded responses, I can hit search again, and it brings up just my uncoded responses. So now I have 295 out of 348. And again, I can go through and do the coding I want to do. And when I'm ready, hit search again, so it just brings up my uncoded responses again. Okay? I don't have to click on my search responses and hit go every time if this is, if this is my main search. All right? But if I want to, I can change it. Now, this search again button becomes a paging button if we have more than 1,000 responses showing. So when I go into, oh, and I didn't change my, that's the wrong one. When I go into Q11, there we go, Ascribe Coder. And let me make sure. There is a setting to do this. I'll talk about it in just a second. To bring up my uncoded, I'm going to search again. And probably what I need to do here, though, is bring up my coded and my uncoded to show you how the paging works. Okay, so this search again button, notice that when I have more than 1,000 responses, this search again button is now green, right? It's got a green background, and there's a little 1/2. It's telling me that I have page 1 of 2 up, and I'm only showing 1,000 responses right now. So when we introduce paging, paging defaults to only showing you 1,000 responses. If you want it to instead show 200 responses on a page, you can change that to 200, and it'll only show 200 responses on a page. So now I've got 6 pages. Okay? We can't show more than 1,000 responses at a time, but we can page to see the next set. And if you do a duplicate, and there are duplicates on it, will code the duplicates from the other page as well. Okay, so that's how the paging works. Okay, wanted to get into that for a minute. So that's search again when you have less than 1,000 responses, and it's go to the next page when you have paging. Let's talk for a minute about the print. The print option really allows us to export our responses directly from the Ascribe Coder window. And there's a number of options here. You can just export the selected responses. So if there were a couple selected that I wanted to export, I could do that. In this export, it will export or show in your report whatever you have showing on the screen. So in this case, I've got the question ID, the respondent ID, the verbatim, the code value, and the code showing. If you also wanted, maybe you also wanted the study ID, you could show the study ID. Okay? If you wanted the notes, the transcription, and the translation, which I am actually showing here, so if these have a note, a transcription, or a translation it would export, then you would turn those on. Okay? So your options are to export the selected responses, and you can do it in either Excel or Word. To export the displayed responses, so I have 135 responses. I have 3 selected. 1, 2, 3. I have 135 displayed. So if I export the displayed responses, I'll get 135 responses. I can export all responses for my current questions. So in this case, I'm showing responses from 7 questions. So it would do all responses from those 7 questions. I can do all responses from current studies. This only comes into play when you've got a code book shared across studies, okay? And then it would do all responses for those current studies. And then responses for codes selected in the code book. So if I wanted the responses that for Chinette, I could click on the code in the code book and then choose responses for codes selected in the code book. Again, there are two formats, Excel and Word, and I'll go ahead and do Excel for displayed responses and hit OK. And you'll see at the bottom here that it's opening it up, and I should be able to just open this guy up. Did it open? Sometimes with GoToMeeting, the opening of that acts funky for me, but basically that's how you export it. Oh, it is actually opening. Maybe not. Oh well, if it comes up, it comes up. So that's print. Okay, again, it's basically an export of your responses to Excel or Word. We've talked a little about settings, and I go over response settings in almost every webinar a little bit. The cool thing about response settings, and let me just quickly go over the tabs that we have available in response settings. We've got responses, related responses, applied codes, and appearance. The neat thing about it is that as you go through these, you'll actually see what it does to the screen. This selection checkbox is mainly for those of us that don't want to accidentally click on something to select it. We would actually have to click on the selection checkbox, okay? Because I know some people have said that selecting things is too easy now, that we accidentally click on something because it's a single click. If you're one of those people, turn on the selection checkbox, and then when you're selecting responses, you'll know you're selecting it because you have to actually click on the checkbox to select or deselect, okay? That's what the selection checkbox is for. The Apply Selected Codes button allows us to do targeted coding, which again, when we talk about coding, that's where you actually pick the codes in your code book and then hit the target to apply those codes. Now, that was a big one. I coded 89 duplicates, so that actually coded 90 responses with Chinette, Corel, and Kleenex. Okay, so that's what the Applied Selected Codes button is doing. The coding quality allows us to mark responses as quality coded, okay, or we could right-click and select all and say Set Selected as quality reviewed. And now these all have the coding marked as quality reviewed. Place text on a new line gives you a different line for the actual verbatim. So all the information about the verbatim is on a line. The verbatim is on its own line. The notes, translation, and transcription would be on their own line if we had one. Just quickly show that. And I know we're running out of time, so I'm going to end on this one. But there we go. So see how each thing is on its own line when you have place text on new line. It's up to you. And again, the cool thing about this is that as you turn these things on and off, you can see the effect it's going to have. So you can really customize the screen to work the way you want it to work, and that customization will stick. One more thing to say here, if you are coding across shared code books and you'd like those shared code books that share to automatically be in place, or you would like it to automatically bring those responses from shared code books in, then you can turn on when starting, bring in, or include questions. Include questions from shared code book. And you've got the option of open ends, other specifieds, and closed ends there. Okay? So I will stop there, and what I'll do is make sure that I schedule for March. I'm going to schedule a search session, probably a print and filter sorting session, maybe a settings session, and a from shared code book session as well, so that we have more time to actually ask questions. So with that, Julie, I'll go ahead and leave the floor open. Have any other questions come in?
No, I've answered a couple questions, Laura, so I think we're okay.
Okay.
But if
All
anybody
right.
has any other comments or questions, please go ahead and type them in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I think we're good, Laura.
Okay. If you do have any questions or anything comes up, please send. You can send an email to support@languagelogic.net. Also, as you're using Ascribe Coder, please note when you have to go to review responses or the single response coder interface, and let us know. Let us know why you have to go to those windows, so that maybe we can address anything that's going on. Thanks so much.